Of course, it would be a motif of, in my opinion, anyone who thinks about things reasonably, that, of course, knowledge is always going to be limited. Life is always going to be imperfect. You can't do it all. We can't know it all, etc. With respect, though, to one another, to social life, the question is to be raised. How well do I know the people that I think I know? And what leads me to have the impressions I have of this person? That's where I wanted to go. And I just think we don't even know ourselves so excellently. So as we are judging one another, it's just a tough question as to how I guess we categorize each other. So I try to apply this to how might people judge me, or how might you get this notion of who I might be based on how you see me. And yeah, that was a weird thing to think about. And with that question is also the question of how would I like to be perceived? The question that was asked when I was researching how to make a website and or blog that people can search for, one of the questions that this guide poses is, how would you like people to be able to find you on the internet? Through what search tags? And so that this really presses me to ask myself, not just how might you perceive me, but how would I like you to perceive me? Two totally different things. I tried to do a little bit of brainstorming, like how might you perceive me? I know that most people who know me, I believe, have some inclination of the fact that I am a highly political individual. It's one of the most consistent aspects of myself. Even when I've been at my most literary, that is if you're counting from about 2011 or so, 2012 or so, to now, I've been a chiefly political person. Even at my most literary, I've still always had a degree of concern for what's going on, especially within the executive branch of our federal government. So I'm inclined to think those who have an idea of me, oh, this guy is political, that's one thing I would imagine you might think of me. Now, it's a completely different kind of conversation if you're just discovering me for the first time on this video. I'm not yet able to wrap my mind around that. I'm not going to go there this time because I'll just lose too much of where I was going already. But for those who may have known me for some time, yeah, the politics thing. And then there's the fact that as a political person, I did for quite some time establish myself as a libertarian. I did for quite some time establish myself as a Republican, both of these things, before establishing myself as a Democrat. So I suppose for people who have known me for some time and have an idea of me, they must think this guy changes a lot. And my friend Tim, he always likes to say when we talk, you're always changing. So, and it would also be the case, a lot of people who know me know that I have a wide array of interests, because I'm interested in politics. I'm interested in artistic endeavors, writing, for example, and self-expression, and certainly in the verbal realm, talking, for example. People may know that I'm a writing tutor, so that's another realm in which you see that there's an social, politics, intellectual, academic. Those are some tag words that perhaps come to mind when people see me. Also very philosophical, though I think only certain people really know my philosophical side. Philosophy just isn't as, based on my experience, it's not as widely discussed, interestingly, as politics. Politics is felt more viscerally by people, so you'll actually reach more people talking about politics, I note, than philosophy. I don't know all that many people who chat about philosophy, though because I work in an academic setting these days, I am fortunate that I get to indulge in a lot of philosophical conversations. So again, context. If you know me, like in the workplace setting, right, you're going to know that I have a lot of philosophical complexity. But if you don't, then all of that context is going to be missing from your presentation of me, or how I'm presented to you. And I was talking about the sense in which I change a lot, because I do have a wide variety of interests. I've done a wide variety of experimentation. As you know, I may or may not know, I've written for the college paper and have been interested in journalism, aside from the political aspect of, political news, but also journalism in general. And when I was young, I wanted to be a movie actor. I've done a lot of creative writing in the more creative realms of poetry, fiction, flash fiction. I used to write movies when I was younger. So there are just these different sides of us, and these are some of the different sides of me. These are ways you might know me. And there are people who might be connected to me on social media, and it's funny because, say 6 months ago, I wasn't really active on social media. I was just concerned with getting into a graduate school. But go 6 months earlier than that, if you were just getting exposed to me on social media, you'd think I was perhaps unhealthily obsessed with seeing Donald Trump impeached. 6 months before that, I don't even remember. Time is something, isn't it? Something, that's an adjective I like to use a lot. Something. This is something. Life is something. These kinds of things I like to say. So there's also the question, though, of how is it I would like to be perceived? And that's something I was thinking about as I was taking my morning walk. How is it that I would like to be perceived by you? And that is its own conversation. I came up with a few things here. I do like the idea of being perceived as a political person, but I had a sort of broad adjective for how I was hoping that I could be perceived. And see, this is interesting because it's not just how do I want to be perceived, because unless you're a con artist or someone who is in an unhealthy situation of being a phony, there should be a marriage between how you want to be perceived and how you actually want to be. And that's another conversation in itself. So in asking how I want to be perceived, I'm also asking, therefore, what qualities is it that I actually hope that I possess? Which adjectives am I hoping that could objectively characterize and describe who I am? And one of them was, I realized, something that I would really hope is to be competent. One of the worst insecurities I've suffered in life is the fear of incompetence. That not just both in terms of being perceived as incompetent and in terms of being incompetent. Because in fact I used to be incompetent, and there was a basis on which I was perceived as incompetent. Of course, even if you are competent, that doesn't necessarily mean people will perceive you as such, because that would be a loaded discussion, wouldn't it? But people don't necessarily choose all the time, not everyone, to be objective, for a variety of reasons that bring up an array of psychological conversations that I haven't fully contemplated to discuss in an appropriate fashion at this time. But that does occur, doesn't it? So, yes, I want to be, and be perceived as competent. That's, of course, quite ambiguous now, isn't it? Exactly what does it mean to be perceived as competent? And competent in what sense? In what realms? And no matter how much you may want to, you really can't be universally competent. That would suggest that you sort of view yourself as a god. Donald Trump, the president, he seems to think he's universally competent, good at everything. But anyone who tries to position themselves to you as good at everything and doesn't tend to give you references for people in the realms that they're good at, that's a person you may not want to trust so much. So one thing that I would hope about myself is that I don't try to put on any airs with respect to being especially competent in this or that, without any basis, especially. So then what is it that I do want to be perceived as competent in? And what I came up with, at least in our first mind mapping draft here, is that I wanted to be perceived. I was hoping you would perceive me as constructively contemplative. That is to say, I would grant you that it is my hope that when you think of Sean O'Connor, you would think of someone who takes the time to think about life and thoroughly analyze some consequential. I would have to say it is ultimately philosophical. That I would have to say, if I had to describe my personality, it's philosophical, just because the ultimate aim of philosophy is really about how you regard and treat your life. And I could think of no other way to categorize myself at the end of the day. Political as I am, politics being, I think, fundamental to philosophy, a core component of philosophy, but the broader sense in which I think I am is philosophical. I think that's just a fact. Based on my own self-analysis, maybe I'm wrong, and you could say that. So I guess it's my hope then that as people, how are you perceiving me? I guess I would hope, therefore, that you're perceiving me as someone who is thoroughly contemplative day to day about certain pressing philosophical items of genuine importance. That's something. I've also said in my my mission statement, if you do read on my blog, the way I wrote it down is this. I wrote that my purpose is to contribute to a universal dialogue on politics, philosophy, and self-improvement through my essays and my video diaries. That's another way of putting it. As I think a well-revised contemplation of it. Time to find some closure in the day here, because I don't want these to go on too long. So then, the gist of this being, thinking about, if we're to sort of sum up here topically how this all went down, right? There's the issue of how there's thinking about how you perceive yourself, there's thinking about how others perceive you, there's thinking about how you want to be perceived, and there's thinking about the basis or lack of a basis for being perceived that way. And again, that issue of how well we do or don't know each other. I wanted to, though, just offer one closing thought, because this is something else that was just sort of flashing in my mind as I was walking. And that is the idea of being supportive of one another. And really asking, as we think about life advancement, it really is important to surround yourself with people who are supportive of those things that mean the most to you. and I don't like to really posit too many. I don't want to get preachy. That's another ironic thing. Philosophical though I may be, I only tend to get preachy in my politics. Philosophically, as opposed to getting too preachy, it's just my hope to say, I think, to make some observations of things that seem apparent to me. On that front, though, I guess I'm thinking about my video blogging endeavors here and public comment, the blog and website and all of the activities and projects connected to it. And I'm thinking about also what it is you might be doing. And I'm thinking from an entrepreneurial perspective, if we really want these things to be economically and financially conducive to us, it is our hope then that we do have networks of people that believe in us and what we're doing and encourage us. And additionally then, that means feedback, doesn't it? So if you do have thoughts, I would reiterate that, of course, I want to know them. I am still in the considerably experimental phase of my video diary blog, especially my video diary vlog, to be most technical about it. So feedback is still crucial at this point. I mean, feedback is always crucial, but I'm still in a place where I'm thinking about things like, how do I sort of want to structure this? How long do I want them to go? How long will I not allow them to go over? For example, I'd rather not go over 10 minutes, but I certainly would cut myself off at 20 unless there was something hugely important to go on about. And so I really wanted to also then, therefore, thank those of you who have been incredibly supportive. My wife, Ashley, David McDermott on Facebook, Bernard Foyeth, my people I've worked for, Charles Haas, Dr. Leonard Winagora, John Kashmir. I want to thank my mother and stepfather. I want to thank Mark Lewis. I want to thank Matthew Snope. I want to thank Heather Lockhart. If I haven't mentioned you, Emmanuel Medina, I just want to say that I apologize. But those of you who have been tremendously supportive of my endeavors, I want you to know I take inventory of these kind of things. I know what it means to... It's a great big world. We can only pay so much attention to so many things. Even when we mean well by offering support to other people, we can't all necessarily consume all of one another's products and services all the time. So for those of you who have really gone out of your way to take time and offer thought into my various projects, I am just so grateful. Anyway, that would be all for now. Have a wonderful day. I will be chatting with you in the near future. Hashtag impeach Trump, by the way. This whole, we've just got to make sure that this is said as a closing thought, really. It's just, I would feel that I'm violating my conscience by not reiterating the fact that the man has now said he's willing perfectly to accept opposition research from other countries on who he's running against, which is illegal. And the fact that there are not yet impeachment proceedings against him officially means that we're standing for it. We just should not stand for this blatant and flagrant lawlessness at the top of our the man who or woman who's tasked with seeing to it constitutionally that the laws are faithfully executed. The case for the man's impeachment is cut and dry. Anyway, that's all. I'll chat with you later. Bye.